2018 Lexus LC500, LC500H. An engaging flagship coupe that engrosses all the senses. A few years ago, I had an epiphany while attending the Mega Cars and Coffee in Irvine, California, on Saturday morning, an event that grew so large it eventually had to be shut down. After perusing the literally hundreds of vehicles, everything from daily driven enthusiast fare to the latest supercars, with a car guy friend of mine who at the time worked for Toyota, we both realized that there wasn't a single Toyota or Lexus. This would seem to be a problem for those brands. Toyota president Akio Toyoda wasn't there, but he would agree with that assessment, as he's on record stating that the long-term success for both the Toyota and Lexus brands requires going beyond smooth, quiet, and comfortable A to B transportation. The company as a whole needs aspirational vehicles that inspire passion and cast a shadow of excellence over the two brands. In fact, Toyoda-san has made it his personal mission to prevent the word boring from ever again coexisting in a sentence with Lexus. If the new LC, which stands for luxury coupe, is an indicator of things to come, we'd say he's well on his way to succeeding. Mere minutes into our drive of the LC500 on the sinuous and extremely well-maintained backroads of southern Spain was all it took to have this epiphany. There's actual road texture being transmitted through the well-shaped and expertly finished steering wheel. It's a much-desired quality that has been disappearing in the wake of electrically assisted power steering and misguided neutering build as progress. Get to know this guy. The mission to build exciting cars could bode well for the brand's ability to court enthusiasts going forward, and it also portends good things for the new LS sedan, which will ride on a larger version of the LC's all-new front-engine, rear-wheel drive architecture, dubbed L. And the company promises an increased focus on dynamics across the lineup going forward, although that doesn't necessarily mean Lexus is aiming to be the most athletic in every segment. LC chief engineer Koji Sato is a former chassis engineer, so perhaps his high priority on steering isn't all that surprising. And he was utterly flabbergasted when we mentioned that other automakers, such as BMW, have told us that steering feedback has been deliberately diminished because that's what some customers want. Sato-san refers to the LC as a back-to-basics car, where much effort was expended to get the fundamentals nailed, and he and his team have mostly succeeded. The front suspension is a double ball joint, both upper and lower, multi-link design very similar to BMW's latest, with a 5-link, multi-link setup at the rear. The opposed piston brake calipers on both axles do an excellent job of hauling the LC down from high speeds. There was much effort expended to reduce weight and lower the center of gravity. Engineers also strive to cut mass at the extremities to diminish the polar moment of inertia for improved rotational response. This includes the use of aluminum for the hood, front fenders, and door skins, with the inner panels of the doors and trunk made from carbon fiber reinforced sheet molding compound. That's the random-oriented fiber stuff, not the neatly entwined weave. There's also an optional carbon fiber roof, with the weave. On the exterior, only the deep drawer rear fenders are rendered in steel. Underneath, the front suspension is forged aluminum and the front shock towers are cast aluminum. Still, the LC500 comes in at a rather heavy 4,300 pounds, according to Lexus, with the LC500H hybrid adding an additional 150. That roughly matches the slightly larger and less sophisticated V8-powered BMW 650i. And those pounds are also front-heavy, with a claimed 54-46% front-to-rear weight distribution for the V8 and 52-48 for the hybrid. Nevertheless, the LC feels alive when pushed hard on the road. We've already mentioned the steering, and although its effort is on the light side at highway speeds, it imparts a natural confidence when hustling down wriggling roads. The suspension is tied down, there's little body roll, and the LC transitions athletically. Although a variable ratio rack and rear-wheel steering are available together as an optional bundle, we'd skip them, as the base setup felt great. Another reason against the so-called active steering is that the way the LC's rear end breaks loose at the limit felt unnatural. Although the LC isn't a track car, nor do we think it should be, Lexus had us understeer the LC around a circuit anyway. It wasn't that the LC was uncontrollable, but we suspect its variable steering hardware had something to do with its lack of yaw response communication as the rear end reaches its limits, although we didn't get the chance to drive a car without it on track to verify that theory. A very different hybrid approach, mimicked the non-hybrid. We should note that these dynamic comments and compliments apply equally to the hybrid model as well, as Lexus has taken a very different approach by engineering the LC hybrid to be as similar as possible to the conventional car. Both LCs wear the same 20 or 21-inch wheels and Michelin Pilot Super Sport or Bridgestone Potenza S001 tires, no efficiency-oriented low-rolling resistance rubber here, and the hybrid retains the prominent tachometer and large magnesium shift paddles. And the hybrid powertrain has been substantially altered to mimic the conventional 10-speed automatic in the V8. The hybrid powertrain starts with the basic building blocks from the GS450H, an Atkinson cycle 3.5-liter V6 connected to the typical Toyota, Lexus hybrid system, with two electric motor, generators and a planetary gear set acting as a pseudo-CVT. The V6 was chosen instead of the 438 horsepower V8 hybrid hardware from the LS500H so that, unlike the LS, the hybridized LC would have a meaningful fuel economy benefit. The LC's hybrid system, however, has been appended with a 4-speed automatic transmission on the back of it. This allows for more electric assist at lower vehicle speeds and it enables the system to operate with the engine off at higher speeds of up to 87 miles per hour. But here's how it gets 10 speeds. The original CVT-esque part of the equation jumps between three fixed ratios, which are then combined with the first three downstream gears from the conventional automatic to create ratios 1 through 9. 10th gear uses the final ratio from the automatic, and is the only time the hybrid bits operate as a CVT. Combined power output is 354 horsepower, an increase of 16 compared with the GS450H, although 9 of those come from revisions to the V6. For the deeper look at the hybrid system, head here. Oral fixation. In addition to the steering, Lexus nailed the booming V8 sound. Powered by the same 5.0-liter V8 that's in the GSF and RCF. The LC500 is up a few horsepower to 471. With the help of a tube running between the intake manifold and the firewall plus flaps in the exhaust, but no electronically produced noise, the cabin is positively filled with nigh-on-perfect V8 frequencies. It swells appropriately with engine speed but isn't overbearingly loud. The ongoing march toward turbocharging has made achieving memorable sound more difficult, which makes the LC500's naturally aspirated roar even more of a standout. Playing this V8 opus is a new, rapid-fire 10-speed automatic. It's not as quick-shifting as a dual-clutch gearbox, and we also experienced a few low-speed shift bubbles, but gear swaps are about as swift as they come for conventional automatics, and upshifts are punctuated with a satisfying pop from the exhaust. Pedal-requested downshifts, too, are exceptionally swift. Unfortunately, sound is where the hybrid loses the plot line. Unlike the V8, it does employ electronic enhancement, and its artificial moaning is further amplified when in Sport S+ mode. It's also down 117 horsepower compared with the V8. Does anyone looking to spend roughly $100,000 on a two-door fashion statement care about the LC500H's potential 50% fuel economy benefit if it means sacrificing the V8's sound and performance? Although due to the new transmission arrangement, Lexus claims the hybrid is only a few tenths of a second slower to 60 miles per hour, but at higher speeds the performance gap felt considerably wider. Plus the hybrid pseudo-10-speed slurs its shifts and they're not nearly as satisfying as those of the V8's automatic. And EV-only range, as is typical for Toyota and Lexus hybrids, is still minuscule, with the slightest prod of the throttle often causing the engine to fire up. So where does the LC fit in? There's not that much dimensional variety in the luxury coupe world. After all, the wheelbase in the Mercedes-Benz S-Class coupe is just 4.1 inches longer than that of the two sizes smaller C-Class coupe. At 113.0 inches, the Lexus LC's wheelbase roughly splits those of the Benz's. However, its overall length is much closer to that of the C-Class, and more than 10 inches shorter than the S, which helps to explain the LC's paltry trunk space. At 5 cubic feet, it's less than half that of the big Mercedes. And Lexus says that back seat space is not a concern for potential customers. The design certainly isn't as classically beautiful as that of the S-Class coupe, but the aggressively creased design language that seems hopelessly overdone on the Lexus RX crossover works here, thanks in no small part to the coupe's excellent proportions. And the interior design is adventurous, with flowing sweeps over the door panels and through the center console. Even the base seats are heavily bolstered, and the optional micro-suede trimmed upgrade versions are even more so. But we wonder if the latter might be a little too tight-fitting for luxury coupe clientele, and they have surprisingly few adjustments, no bolster or thigh control adjustment, and only two-way lumbar. The LC is a more dynamic Grand Touring alternative to the S-Class or 6 Series coupes, but it's not nearly as dynamically fabulous, and roughly 1,000 pounds heavier, as a Porsche 911. Lexus says it expects only 20% of the roughly 4,800 expected U.S. sales of the LC to be the hybrid once the car reaches dealers next spring. That estimate may be high, which is good, because then the LCs you'll see at a local Cars and Coffee almost certainly will pack the V8.